Hey everyone, BucklingOne here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving deep into a massive debate that's got the Battlefield community in absolute uproar. It's the open versus closed weapon system in the Battlefield 6 beta. If you've ever scrolled through a gaming forum or social media and you've seen fans lose their minds over what seems like a tiny detail, you know how intense these arguments can get, right? It's like the entire identity of the game is on the line. So, grab a snack, settle in and let's unpack what's going on, why this mechanic is causing such a stir and what it tells us not just about Battlefield but about online communities, game design and even how we navigate change versus tradition in any passion-driven space. First, let's break down the basics for anyone who might not be deep in the Battlefield lingo. What are closed and open weapon systems? Closed weapons are what you would call the traditional approach. Think classic Battlefield, very structured. Your class, whether you're support, recon, engineer or assault, it locks you into a specific type of main weapon. Support will get LMGs for suppressive fire, recons get sniper rifles for long range shots, engineers get SMGs for close quarters combat and assault players get assault rifles for that all-purpose firepower. It's all about defined roles, what fans call classic Battlefield balance. Each class has a specific job and your weapon reinforces that role. Now, open weapons, well, that's the opposite. It's all about freedom or chaos depending on who you ask, right? In an open system, any class can use any gun category. Do you want a sniper that runs around with an SMG to dominate in close quarters? Well, absolutely go for it. How about an engineer sniping from the rooftops? Not a problem. It's total mix and match, letting you tailor your loadout to the situation. It sounds simple, right? But this choice has sparked a massive debate about what Battlefield should be. Does your weapon define your class and role, or should the game give you the tools to play your way? It's a fork in the road for the game's identity, and the community seems to be split right down the middle. To get a sense of what's driving this, I've been diving into the trenches a bit on Reddit threads and a few YouTube videos. And people have got some strong opinions on this. The closed weapons crowd, which you could say a lot would be the self-proclaimed OG players, right, in inverted commas, those veterans who've been with the series since games like Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Bad Company 2, etc., or even earlier games. Most of them are fiercely team closed, right? They argue that closed systems create a night and day difference in gameplay. In closed lobbies, they say teamwork is on another level. Medics are charging into danger to revive teammates. Recons are using motion sensors to spot enemies for the squad, putting down deploy beacons for people to spawn back in on. Engineers are repairing vehicles like clockwork, and squads are actually talking on their comms, coordinating to play the objective, or what we like to say PTFO. It's the kind of cohesive tactical experience that feels like the golden age of Battlefield, almost idyllic for a big online shooter. These players argue that closed weapons aren't just about the guns, it's about the structure that they create. Specific weapons push you towards certain playstyles, like a support class laying down suppressive fire or a recon holding a long range position. This is what they say makes teams more cohesive and prevents the dreaded one gun, one class meta where everyone just spams the single best weapon. They're nostalgic for the days of Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4, calling for what some might say all they want is Battlefield 4.5. Battlefield 4 is a game that preserves the soul of the franchise, and basically they just want that expanded upon. For them, it's not just a mechanic, it's about the game's identity, leaning into defined roles that make large-scale battles feel strategic and purposeful. But here's where things get interesting. Not everyone agrees that closed weapons are the holy grail, or that Battlefield's history is as rigid as the OG crowd claims. The open weapon supporters have a totally different perspective, and they're just as passionate. They argue that class identity doesn't come from your gun, it comes from your gadgets, your tools. The support's class job is to heal, revive, resupply. They have their medkits and defibrillators, but it's not because they're carrying an LMG. The recon's role is about spotting enemies, using motion sensors, putting down deploy beacons close to objectives so that teammates can spawn in and keep pressure on. It's not all about sniping. Open weapons, they say, let you do your job better by picking the right gun for the moment. So imagine you're a support class in a tight urban map like Siege of Cairo. You might need to have an SMG to clear the room before you can safely revive a teammate. God forbid you might even need a shotgun, right? For that real close quarters, tight combat situations. Maybe you're a recon player and you want to push the front lines with an assault rifle, but still use your deploy beacon and your motion sensors. Open systems give you that flexibility, letting you adapt to the situation rather than being boxed in by what you could say is the label of your class. And there is a twist. Some players point out the Battlefield's history isn't as locked down as the closed weapons fans make it out to be. Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, even Bad Company 2 had more flexibility than people might remember. They had all class weapons like carbines, shotguns, DMRs that anyone could unlock and use. In Battlefield 3 you could put a sniper scope and a bipod on an assault rifle, which kind of blurs the lines between classes. So the idea of a pure closed weapons tradition, well, it might be a bit of nostalgia talking and not the full picture. Memory and history can be funny like that. What's fascinating to me though is how varied player experiences are. Some OG players will swear that closed weapons are teamwork paradise with squads working together like a well-oiled machine. But others, even some veterans, will say they've had just as much fun and coordination in open weapons lobbies as we've seen recently. Some even claim that there's no real difference. Great teamwork happens in open modes and selfish chaotic play can plague closed ones. It's all over the map. I've experienced it myself. In the beta, I've experienced both sides of the coin, right? But the variability suggests that the mechanics alone don't really dictate how people play. And there is a theory floating around. It's that the player demographics have quite a big influence on it. OG players will actively seek out closed weapons modes because they crave that structured classic Battlefield feel. Meanwhile, the newer or the more casual players, maybe people who are coming from other fast-paced shooters like Call of Duty, to name just one. There are many more, but COD is the one we're going to pick on here. Well, they will default to open modes because they're the first listed in the menu. So it's really less about the system changing behaviour and more about it attracting different types of players with different priorities. And then there's also the issue of player motivation, which is a big one. A lot of fans will complain that no matter what the mode, many players are just chasing their kill-death ratio or grinding challenges. If you're focused on racking up the kills or unlocking shiny new skins or accolades, teamwork might not be your priority. And it makes you wonder, does the weapon system even matter? Players are conditioned by other shooters to prioritise their own personal stats. It's like the game sets the sandbox and the rules, but human nature, which is our habits, goals, biases, that often takes over. Confirmation bias plays a big role too if you think about it. Players might see what they expect. Closed fans find teamwork in closed modes because they are looking for it, while open fans enjoy the freedom of open modes and notice the wins there. It's like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This complexity though has led to some serious frustration with the developers, DICE and EA. A big complaint is the menu design, the user interface. Players say the closed weapons option is buried, sometimes off screen or hard to find, while open weapons feel like the default. Some even accuse the devs of deliberately pushing open systems to appeal to a broader, more casual audience, which draws comparisons to Battlefield 2042. If you remember, 2042 got slammed for its open class system because it lost the franchise's identity. It was the first game where massive sweeping changes were made. Seeing open weapons prominent again sets off the alarm bells for these fans because they feel like history is repeating itself. They're begging for classic modes like Conquest and Rush to default to closed weapons, with open modes being clearly labelled as a separate option. On the other hand though, and to be fair, people have acknowledged that DICE has been listening to recent feedback. They've made changes and they are trying to build with the community. There is hope, but there is also a hint of skepticism there, especially about what Portal is going to bring. We haven't heard a lot about it, but there is hype around it, right? It's supposed to let players create their own custom classic experiences, but fans are worried that it won't live up to the hype, given how it played in past games like 2042. You could say it's a classic tension. Developers are trying to innovate and broaden the game's appeal while facing a loyal fan base with very specific expectations. And if you put yourself in DICE and EA's shoes for a second, how are they supposed to attract new players without alienating the veterans who've been with the series for years? It's a very fine line to walk, and the default settings like making open weapons prominent sends a strong message about what the devs think the game should be. So let's zoom out a bit. What is the big picture here? Well, the debate isn't just about guns. It's also a case study in how online communities work. Passion flares up over the smallest details, and our biases shape how we interpret our experiences. It's a bit of a reminder to dig deeper, separate anecdotes from evidence. One player's story of amazing teamwork might not reflect the whole community, and what feels true to you might not be the full picture. This applies way beyond gaming, whether you're navigating a news story, a work project, or even a heated online argument. It's crucial to ask why people feel the way they do. What values or experiences are driving their arguments? It also makes you think about innovation versus tradition. Whether it's a game, a product, an industry, how do you balance keeping what fans love with the pressure to evolve and attract new people? When does reinventing the wheel excite your audience? And when does it just annoy your core fans? These are deep, you could even say almost philosophical questions about what makes an experience authentic or good. And here's a final thought from me. Does the game's design, open or closed, really dictate how we play? Or are we just bringing our own habits, expectations and playstyles to the table? Maybe the perfect game design isn't about forcing everyone into a rigid, cooperative mold, but about subtly nudging players towards teamwork, no matter what gun they're holding. If you think about it, can design override human nature, or does it just attract certain types of players, creating a cycle where the modes reinforce the behaviours we already bring? So that's my take on the situation. What do you think? Are you team closed, craving that structured, classic Battlefield vibe? Or are you team open, loving the freedom to play your own way? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear where you stand. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Battlefield debate, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell, all the usual stuff, just so you don't miss my next video. Let's keep the conversation going. This has been BucklingOne. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield, and I'll also see you in my next video.